Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. I hope that you've had a wonderful day. I know many people are returning for back to school, and we are all so excited. With that said, I want to first make some announcements, and then we're going to get right into my topic tonight. So, first things first, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Swing Girl Media channel, so you can find it on those channels, Fire Stick and whatnot. Also, the social media handles for me, because I know some of you have been asking, you're wanting to follow me, you're wanting to keep in touch and connect in various ways. Here you go. So my Facebook account is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. And YouTube is India White 123. So I hope that you have been able to kind of follow me, connect with me some way, one way or the other. I'm here for all of you. Now, I also want to remind you to check out my website. I have been busy writing blogs. I have been busy showing you guys of the great things taking place nationwide as we are all aiming to close the achievement gap together. So thanks for checking out my website. The website is www.india-white.com. So you can go there to check out some blogs and coaching event, or if you're wanting some resources, then you can go there to find it as well. Now, with that said, as I mentioned earlier, we are all preparing for going back to school. Some of us have little ones. I have two kiddos getting ready to go into middle school. So yes, I am completely full. And we're looking at sports, we're looking at physicals, we're looking at all kinds of good things. And so I figured, you know what? Not only do I want to talk about this just with my friends and those that are in my circle, I want to kind of bring on this topic today, as we are all trying to welcome students back to school. So today's podcast will be how to welcome students back to school. Again, how to welcome students back to school, because I think there are so many different ideas, but maybe I can just provide you guys with some just basic pointers from a student lens, teacher lens, and even a parental lens. So bear with me. Feel free to share this out with those that you know that are taking on this task. So I did write a blog earlier this week on preparing students back to school. I gave you 10 pointers. Well, guess what? Today, I'm going to break down those 10 pointers so that teachers can always refer to this, and administrators as well. First things first, I'm going to just kind of tell you what those 10 pointers are, and then I plan to pull up that blog for you so you can see it on my website, and then we're going to elaborate on that, and then we'll elaborate on some other things. Now, today's audience is for students grades K-12, so there's so much there to cover, and parents as well. So now, first things first, tips for teachers. So I want to first address my teachers. First off, congratulations. I know that you guys are excited. I know that you have done your best to prepare your classroom and you've got your curriculum going. I know some teachers are still setting up their online access to digital platforms, and you're looking through things, you're doing your lesson planning, you're super excited. You've got, connection with some parents, and some teachers have not started yet. So some teachers, you've got open house taking place. Other teachers, you've already started and you're doing your best to make relationships with students. And so with that said, I want to get right into this. So first things first, tips for teachers. First thing that you want to do is to create a warm and inviting classroom. When I first started teaching and a few years ago when I was still in the classroom, one thing I always aimed to do was I aimed to develop warmth and an inviting classroom by first, doing my best to make eye contact as culturally appropriate for students, making sure I told them my name, sharing with them that I had children so that students didn't feel like I had no relevance in the classroom. I also, and if I didn't have kids, like when I first started, I might have spoken about oh, I have nieces and nephews that are around your age, or I have people in the neighborhood that are around your age, so that students knew that I had a bone of empathy and compassion to me. Another thing I would do is I would read the Harry Wong book, which I'll pull all this stuff up, and I would elaborate on just those classroom management techniques that you can do to show that you have wittedness as an educator, so that students don't feel like they can run all over you by the end of the first week of school. And there's some nifty tricks to that. We'll get into that when I pull up the blog. The second thing we want to do, educators, is to establish clear expectations. We'll build relationships as the third tip. Encourage goal setting. Teaching a growth mindset is the fifth thing. Okay. I want to say here, just because it's like fresh on me, making sure that in the first week of school, we're not aiming really to touch any curriculum, but we're really striving to get to know our students is key. Because I can tell you, when they go home over the weekend, they're probably going to forget 90% of any curriculum that was taught to them. So I just want to tell you that, so that, teachers don't, waste, feel like they're wasted. They've wasted a lesson, because students just weren't in the mindset. Let's keep going over the tips. Okay. So tip number 6, provide opportunities for autonomy, celebrate progress and success of every learner, teach grit through resilience. That's great resilience in time, and provide meaningful challenges for your 9th tip. And then tip number 10, be a role model for all of your learners. So these are my 10 tips that I wanted to inspire you guys with. And I'm going to now share with you the blog that I was able to put together for you guys in one of my dorky sessions, because I just felt like, hey, why not help? So here you have the blog on my website, www.india-white.com. There's my big forehead people always pick on. Okay, so 10 tips for welcoming students back to school and fostering grit. I love to highlight, researchers and experts in their right. Of course, grit. When we're talking about grit, I always highlight Dr. Duckworth, because she's a rock star and she coined the term, and she has helped so many of us. I mean, that was one book that I just could not put down, was her book on grit. And so I highly recommend it if you have not read that. But long story short, she talks about how grit is a crucial trait that helps students to overcome challenges and achieve their dreams. And also, they talk about developing a growth mindset, which we know was coined with Dr. Carol Dweck, and implementing efforts to harness grit throughout the year. If you do this, students will be able to thrive in your classrooms. So I go on to talk about this. So first things first, I said to create a warm and inviting classroom. Now, I want to also highlight another book for you as an educator. If you have not read this is a book by Dr. Harry Wong. It's called The First Days of School, How to Be an Effective Teacher. When I was teaching my first years of school, I am so thankful that this book was purchased for all teachers. It helped tremendously. He talked about how, like, when you first go to school as an educator, the last thing you want to do is to have this silliness to you to where kids can't take you seriously. You almost have to be like a kind drill sergeant. So you're trying to put your foot down without scaring your kids away, but you also have to let them know that you mean business. And so it was beautiful, because he was able to really walk us through some steps. If maybe you can Google him and find out some of those steps of how you could set up your classroom and set expectations, and how to have a tone of voice that is professional, how to dress professionally. He talked about that too, that when you're starting out, you want to look like your profession. You want to look like an educator. You want to look professional. It was imperative, because image does have an impact on how students will take you as well, teachers. So anyways, he talks about, and then going on, it's now back to me saying, consider decorating your classroom with colorful and engaging displays that reflects your students' interests, backgrounds, and future aspirations. I used to do this, and I tell you, the way I did it was I used to find out the backgrounds of my students, of their ethnic cultures and their communities. And so, like, if students are from India, students are from Jamaica, students were from Africa, students were from, Argentina, wherever, I would intentionally take their flags and laminate them and put on like nice little poster, like I would say construction paper, and I would hang those around the class for them. And with dignity throughout the year, I would highlight those, and I would make my lessons culturally relevant by sometimes, referring to those cultures in these particular math problems and real world situations. And it was a really wholesome approach to education. I would highly recommend it. Also, a visually appealing environment can make students feel comfortable. You don't want your classroom to be a place where all the walls are plain. And I listen, that so it goes both ways. Some people are like, fill the walls as much as you can. I've been to teachers' classrooms where they still had student work from prior years up, and I just scratch my head like, this is a new slate. Like, but at the same time, they're showing the expectation levels, right, to the new students coming in. But I also want to say that even though I'm not completely on board with having work work displayed where it's covering a significant amount of space for a new year, I also don't think that having completely bare walls in the classroom is the best fit, solution either, because some students need something to gravitate to. Their minds are constantly going in the lesson. Yes, you do need them to have blank space so they can look off and divert and think, and that's what some students will do. And maybe on those walls, you can talk about, keep your grit, or you can talk about, don't give up, or you can have like different reminders. If your school has like a PBIS type of project or something, you can post up some of those. You can post up your rules and your procedures. You can take your procedures that are in your syllabus. You can have those blown up. I used to do that. There's so many different things that you can do to really help foster a warm and inviting classroom to your students. Now, the second one was establishing clear expectations. So when you are establishing clear expectations for behavior, academic performance, and classroom procedures, you got to take this one day at a time. Listen, this can be so frustrating. I'll stop sharing for a minute just so I can talk to you, educators. So this can be so frustrating because if this is not implemented correctly, then you can run the risk of having a very short fuse with students, losing your patience, losing tolerance, and then it turns into referral city in your classroom because you weren't able to fully establish rules and procedures at the beginning of the year and then keep the trust of students that was the best thing for your learning environment, to keep the classroom a place that was conducive for learning. So it's imperative that you do whatever it takes. And sometimes that means you have to create buy-in for students so that they want to come back into the classroom. They want to abide by the rules and procedures that are there. And remember, there's a difference between a rule and a procedure. If the rules are broken, then usually you can remind students of following the rules. Procedures are also reminders, but I was also told that procedures should not be something that if a student doesn't keep a procedure, that it becomes punitive. Like, for instance, if you have a procedure that a student is supposed to raise their hand to talk and they don't raise their hand, it shouldn't turn into a referral to somebody's office, but it should be that you as an educator says, I'm going to have to remind that student a little bit more and remind that student. Now, if they're just completely defiant, then that might tie to a class rule. But then you can talk to the parent about, listen, I have this class rule and I have this procedure that's helping me with the class rule, and I need your support, the parent or guardian. I need your support with helping, student A to be able to abide by these classroom rules so that, instruction can flow smoothly. So that, it can get a little bit sticky, but I just want to encourage you so that, you don't feel so overwhelmed with having rules and procedures and feeling like you have a set of 20 rules versus you have a classroom set of 5 rules and then maybe 8 procedures or whatnot, if that makes sense. All right, teachers, let's keep going. So the next thing that I spoke about was building relationships. Now, this is key. So if you're trying to build relationships with students, the first thing you have to do is definitely get to know your student, know their backgrounds. And if there are students that you might be uncomfortable with as an educator, maybe you're uncomfortable with culture, uncomfortable with language, uncomfortable with background, uncomfortable with, their status in life, and you are having some some difficulty with making connections, I highly recommend that you try to find out if there are other educators that had a great relationship with those, students. Are there coaches that can help out? Could you talk with guidance counselors? And then maybe, if there are particular biases, as we all have biases. So if there's something that you might be struggling with, what can you do to really make the difference so that you can get beyond any kind of hindrances or any hiccups so that you can be the best teacher for these students? I want to also encourage you to look into different cultural fads and things like that. So for instance, there is a cultural fad in the African American community of haircuts for African American males or African American students, and it's called having a taper. And what that means is that the student, they get their hair they get all of this polished around the edge, all around, right? But then the top, they just let it just free run. So I mean, whether it's dreads, whether it's plaits, whether it's a high top like a fro, or whether it's just whatever, they let it flow free. Well, guess what? That's not always going to be a style that is going to look like they took the time to organize every single, dread or every single plait into this perfectly geometric, pattern that looks like 100%, shiny, polished. Sometimes it's going to run free, but guess what? Their hair is done. That is a part of culture. But at the same time, if you're not used to something like that, it could look as if you're assuming that this child is not really kept or not really put together. And I mention this because then this can create situations of adversity for students that could be avoided if we just look a little bit into the culture. And I pray that, when dealing with particular cultures, that, we do our digging, we do our homework so that we are not making an issue out of something that should not be an issue at all. We've heard stories of students getting suspended because, of various hairstyles, or students not being able to graduate, not being able to walk across the stage because of the way their hair looked. And so I think that being able to be culturally sensitive and doing our homework of different cultural fads like a taper can help us to alleviate any misconceptions that we might have about culture, and just also highlighting cultural awareness and celebrating just different ways that cultures exist today. So with that said, I want to now pull up my blog that I wrote for you guys on establishing relationships, to talk about more of that with you. So let's do it. Now, some students might also speak a different language or have a different culture from you. So take a moment, educators, to celebrate this and be curious as to how you can connect with each learner. Choose to take time to get to know your students individually and show genuine interest in their lives, hobbies, and in their aspirations. What do they want to become? And if they don't have an aspiration, can you maybe suggest 3 aspirations, 3 to 5? I try to tell teachers, whenever a student comes to you empty-handed and they're like, I don't know what I want to be, that is perfect grounds for you to birth positive dreams into them. Do they want to be a business person, a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, a surgeon, an entrepreneur? It is your time as an educator to really pump them up with that. Also, find out their fears and their excitements about learning and create a plan to help them navigate through any roadblocks throughout the year. Now, the 4th goal was encouraging goal setting. This is everything, because when you do this, you're teaching students to break down their larger goals into simpler, smaller, achievable steps. That's the key here. Some students, they'll say, I have a goal, but then they have so much anxiety. It is your fulfillment as an educator to help them not only break down those goals, but to understand the importance of perseverance, and to help them to remain resilient and manage their time wisely. I can't say that part enough, because students will say, yeah, I want to be successful, I want to do this, but they don't have a plan and they don't have a time frame. So then they're just kind of wishing. And if you're just wishing without a time frame or a plan, that's almost like you're gambling with life. It's almost like playing the lottery and you have no guarantee of fulfilling these high optimistic goals that you have set for yourself. So, want to encourage you to continue to help students with their goal setting. And the next thing we spoke about was teaching a growth mindset, because the thing is, when your students are going to come to you, and I'll talk to you guys about this, with anxieties in particular. I'm a math person, so math anxiety, some students will enter to your math classroom like they want to fight you, and you didn't even do anything to them. It's because of their prior experiences in math. It's because of what they went through when they were trying to go through math homework with the parent or guardian or somebody else on the outside of the classroom, and it's created a negative perception of math and a negative experience. And so they're bringing that into the math classroom. But this could be any content area. And so being sensitive to that is key. And, being able to help students with the growth mindset is everything, because you're able to help them get and block out all of the negative junk and just clean out all the toxicity, and then start fresh with new I can statements, student-friendly language. You can write up student-friendly language whenever you're doing your agendas and things like that. I can do this, or students will be able to do this, and then students can do this. And you can write this and help students to start speaking like that, because then that helps to build their sense of identity, and it helps to build their sense of competency in your classroom. Now, the next tips. Tip number 6, provide opportunities for autonomy. This is everything, because once students have that sense of autonomy, that metacognition process is going to flow. Students are going to feel like they can really contribute to a lesson, and they feel like their opinion matters, their student voice matters, and that they are really proficient and they're thriving, and they're, as they're striving towards academic achievement and excellence in your classroom. So continue to provide opportunities for autonomy, allow student voice to be heard, allow students to collaborate with their peers, allow students to come up to the board and to do, examples with you. This is imperative if you're trying to really grow your student into someone that has a strong math identity in your classroom, or a strong identity in your classroom in general. So now the next thing I want to talk about is celebrating the progress and success of every learner. This is key, because so many times we assume that students have somebody that's them on the back, somebody that's saying, oh, I believe in you, you've got this. But can you believe that maybe you might be the only person with the voice that is encouraging your student? Maybe they don't have someone at home that is talking education to them. Maybe they don't have someone that is patting them on the back when they're doing their homework. Or maybe they might do their homework at home, but maybe there's a lot of pressure, so they're not really getting that sense of just true celebration of who they are as a person, and their contributions. So you as the teacher, you have so much power in your hand to really love those kids and make them feel like they're on the top of the world in your classroom. So I wish you the best with that. And then, of course, teaching grit through resilience. So great resilience in time. If students are like, I just don't want to do this, I'm going to give up, I don't know if I can do it, you can tell them, great resilience in time. Stay gritty. You've got this. Continue to persist to the end. Great resilience in time. Take grit with you no matter what. Continue to pat them on the back and continue to convince them that they've got what it takes to be successful in your class. Then, of course, number 9, provide meaningful challenges. So I'll share my screen to talk more about this and what I spoke with you guys about regarding providing meaningful challenges for students. So let's get to it. So when you're providing meaningful challenges, you want to offer students tasks and assignments that are appropriately challenging, scaffolding the support for every student when needed, but encouraging them to push beyond their comfort zones. That is everything. Pushing beyond their comfort zones, because students will want to kind of coast through once they feel like they've met the minimum requirements. So when you push them beyond, that really is what's helping them with a productive struggle to really advance into proficiency, and then being able to be a class leader and possibly teaching their peers because you did not allow them to settle in their comfort zone. Also, I want to say this too, if students are being challenged in the other way, like maybe they've missed a couple of years and retention is low, and they're having problems, you can help accelerate the learning of your students by cycling the content and providing enough time to grasp that content, and then giving other supports to them. For instance, you might have to have an MTSS or RTI instructional leader who can provide accommodations and remedial supports for those learners, and help them to really get through academically in your class. So those are some things you want to do. And then the last thing I spoke to you guys about, the last tip, teachers, be a role model. So demonstrate grit in your own life by sharing personal stories as appropriate of perseverance and resilience. Choose to connect to students by reminding them that they're not alone, and that many great people have had to persist through hardships with grit. Model a growth mindset and embrace challenges to show students that their setbacks are a natural part of the learning process. Your example will inspire them to develop their own grit. So remind them to have great resilience in time as they aim for proficiency and academic excellence in your classroom. So with that said, guys, it's all about empowering your students to embrace grit, become resilient, lifelong learners, and tell them to take grit with them. I appreciate you guys allowing me to walk you through that, but I'm not done. I now want to flip this, and I want to talk to you guys about other things that you want to do to prepare students. First things first is I want to talk about parents now. Tips for working with parents. Communicate, consider life situations, and use active listening and empathy. This is imperative because parents are coming to you, teachers, with their best at heart. They're giving you their child. They're giving you the best that they've got. Some parents are going through life. They're going through sickness. They're going through disabilities. They've, lost a loved one. They're going through transition. Some of them might have just moved there. Some of them might have lost their job. Some of them are dealing with relationship stuff. And it's a lot sometimes. And so, some parents travel. So it's imperative that when parents are coming to you from open house, or if they didn't even get a chance to come to open house, it's imperative that you find out from the parents any quirks or anything that, they might need your help with. They might need some accommodations. Maybe, if the child is in a home where, they have different guardians that they transition between throughout the year, then you might want to find out, how would that affect your child's ability to be successful in that classroom? Or, what if the parent is dealing with sickness? Is there, another way that you can communicate? Maybe you have a specific district, form of communication, which yes, use it. But what if there's something else that you have to kind of put together and kind of let them know, listen, I also have this? Or what if they come to you and say, my better or my preferred way to contact me is ABC? Would you be able to make those adjustments with them? And I hope the answer is yes. Talk with your administration team, talk to guidance counselors to figure out what you need to do to get by, to help those parents. Use active listening and empathy. That is everything, especially with parents. They will give you the rundown of what's taking place so that you can help them with helping their child be successful in your class. Now, I'm going to also talk about parents since I was talking about teachers. I'm going to flip it now to parents. So if you're a parent, I'm here with you. I want to encourage parents, do your part the best way possible to prepare your child for success. For instance, if your child is, grades K-12, whatever, and there are specific expectations, ask as many questions as possible. Do as much as you can to get your child prepared for whatever, whether it's school supplies, sports, whatever. Get your child aligned as best as you can. If you need support, please don't hesitate to tell someone in the community or to tell someone at the school that you need support, because they will help you. Okay. But don't assume that you're in this by yourself and that, the teacher or that, other district leaders can't help you, because they really can. So I want to encourage you parents to go out there. Now I want to talk to parents that are parents of seniors, and I want to talk about some things that you want to do, parents, for these seniors. Um, and the reason why I want to do this is because I want to talk about um, graduation rates, high school, and things like that. So the number of high school graduates increased nationally, according to the National Center of Education Statistics. It increased by 25% between 1999 and 2012. However, it's also showing us that the number of high school graduates is projected to be 2% lower in 2023 and 2024 than in 2011 and 2012. And so I can kind of show you like why I want to talk a little bit about this. I'll be a little bit of a dork right now, but I won't dive too deep into this. But I just want to kind of show you this. So this is graduation rates. I want you to just follow me here with this table and things like that. So this is table 9. It's showing us here, guys, the total number of high school graduates. It says it increased 25%, right? But unfortunately, it's projected to be 2% lower in 2023 to 2024. So that's this year, than in 2011 and 2012. So in order to start, if you look at the table right here, you see this, the table, and it's projected, and you see how it's kind of like lumpy. It's kind of like it was going up, and now it's kind of trying to trend out. It's trying to figure out what it's going to do. We have to do our part so that this graph here can continue to go up versus kind of sloping down. And this is why we have to stick together as a community. And this is why we have to just continue to stick together. I want to now go to demographic as well, and talk about demographic things that I was able to find out for you guys. So now we're going to talk about high school graduates regarding race and ethnicities. So I want you to see why I am focusing on this. So the number of this is talking about high school graduates by race and ethnicity, and it says here, unfortunately, the number is decreased by 13% between 2011 and 2012 and 2023, 2024 for students who are white. There's also a decrease of 14% for students who are Black. Look at this, an increase of 49%. Excellent. An increase for students who are Hispanic of 49%. Excellent. And then there's an increase, excellent, for students who are Asian Pacific Islander, 3%. Decrease for students, 21% decrease for students who are American Indian or Native, Alaska Native, and then an increase of 48% of students who are of 2 or more races. So we want to focus on all students, but in particular, these arrows that unfortunately are showing down. So white students, Black students, and Native American students, we want to do our best this year to do what we can to help close the achievement gap so that these numbers will actually start to increase versus decrease for all students. So with that said, how can we do that? I want to just share a little bit of basics with you guys. First things first, for seniors, how do we help them to get ready and for college and career readiness? Here are a couple things. Parents of seniors, make sure that you guys have done the FAFSA. Make sure that you've spoken to your children about college applications. And listen, there are your 4-year universities, but then there are also community colleges. Now listen, for instance, I'm in Florida. If a child wanted to go to University of Florida, but their GPA is not high enough, like I think University of Florida's GPA is it's like 3.6 or something like that. I know it was around there when I went. Long story short, say your child has a 3.1 and they want to go to University of Florida. All hope is not lost. You might have an option to actually put them into community college first for 2 years. Find the community college of the university that your child wants to go to. Have them to also apply there. And then if they don't get accepted into the 4-year university, they can get accepted into the 2-year community college and transfer after 2 years into the public university and obtain their degree from that university, that 4-year university. There are scholarships that will help as well. There are also different Pell Grants and whatnot that can help if your students pass the SAT, ACT, and they get a certain score and they have a GPA, I think of like a 3.5 or something like that. Those are some things that you want to look into, different grants and scholarship options for your students. Talk to your child about maybe joining the military, because the military also will help to pay for their college as they are enrolled in serving our country. So those are some things that parents, all of you, should be talking about with your children, especially seniors, but definitely junior parents of juniors. You should be doing that maybe towards like the spring of the junior year with your child to figure out what their options will be. I want to also say about college applications. If you're aspiring to get your child into college, I would highly recommend that their college applications be filled out by the first week of September. I'll say that again. I would highly recommend that their college applications be filled out by the first week of September, because you don't want it to be that you missed the cutoff to get them into that 4-year university. And now you're looking at, I don't know what to do. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And don't forget about other phenomenal colleges. There's HBCUs out there as well that are doing some phenomenal things and have some great programs. Just make sure you're expanding your options. Make sure that you're possibly doing college visits with your seniors and whatnot, and just really talking to them about taking advantage of their last year, that they're getting their community service hours in as well, and that they're not taking all like extracurricular classes at the end of their school year, but that they're really trying to apply themselves still academically, even in their senior year. So I know colleges will be looking at that. So I wish you guys the best. But guys, thank you so much for joining me again on the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I'm very thankful that you took the time to listen. Please share this with anyone that you feel it would help. And if you're wanting to get in touch with me, you can remember to contact me via social media. Miss India White is Facebook. The India White is LinkedIn. Indie Speak and Teach is Twitter. Indie238 is Instagram. And India White 123 is my YouTube. And TikTok is Dr. India White. So with that said, guys, I am so thankful that I was able to join you. Also, check out my website. You can also message me on my website, india-white.com, if you're wanting books, blogs, or if you're wanting some resources as well to help you in the classroom. And so, with that said, do whatever it takes for yourself and your team to stay gritty as we continue to help students by closing the achievement gap. I wish you guys the best. Stay gritty. And until next time, take care.